Welcome back to Old Guy REI. Today we're going to be doing the second video in a series I hope that will take off and we'll be doing for several months. Uh, and we're going to be talking to other investors in our community. And I'm hoping just to get a little bit more exposure for them out there in the community because everybody's doing a lot of great things. And today, Lindsay Barrientos is with me. She also has a YouTube channel. It's called Lynn Does Investing. And I'll see if I can figure out how to put that in the notes so people can find you if that's all right. But thank you, Lynn, for being with me today. I'm looking forward to this talk.
Thank you for inviting me. It's so kind.
Yeah, of course. Um, so I think you recently went to the ORAD event in Vegas, made some great connections there, it sounded like. And even though you apparently made a really good friend in Jen, I just want Jen to know that I'm your biggest fan. So if she wants to debate me on that, we can talk about it. But what was your overall experience with that? Did you have a good time? And it sounded like you met a lot of great people.
Yeah, no, the Aura event was amazing. I signed up to for one rental at a time last year, and for the longest time I didn't know it was a community. I thought it was just Michael Super posting videos on there. I'm sure he mentioned like, oh, I have a school community, but I never like clicked on it, so I never thought I was going to join. But I guess one of those days I did, and I realized like the amount of people at the time. I was like 200 members that they were there, and they were talking real estate all day, every day. So I was just like, oh my God, there's people crazy like me out there. So let me talk to them. And, eventually found your channel, found Mark's channel, and found other people's channels. And I don't know, I felt like listening to you guys. I don't listen to music anymore. I listen to podcasts all the time. Listening to you guys and going to your struggles and your successes was the thing that was so relatable because I feel like on YouTube or social media or like the ads that prompt you, like everybody's like, buy 1,000 houses or buy a 200 unit a building and you'll be fine. And I'm like, no, well, it takes more than that. So I definitely felt like that the community that Michael Server has put together is some realistic expectations or what you should be expecting when you're investing in real estate for the first time. And the conference, the event was amazing. There were so many motivational speakers. There were so many people that you can talk to and just get a greater understanding of where they are in the journey. And meeting everybody after talking to you guys for a few months was cool because it does feel like a family. It feels like everybody's rooting for each other, and it feels like you put on your shirt. Like I found my tribe. Like I found the people I'm supposed to be with.
Yeah, that was a big message that came out. Um, and I still, I talk about our journey and how I still feel like we're still rookies, right, at the beginning of the journey, and that's where we wanted to start sharing our mistakes and our lessons learned with this channel. And Zuber was just like, just get started, just put it out there, no editing and all this stuff. And Dion encouraged me as well. But I was really glad to see when you started your channel. I think you already have a lot of great content on the videos that you have out there already. And like you said, everybody's just willing to help, and we're all crazy. We have outside of the Wednesday call, I have a tighter group that we talk on Mondays, and they're just nuts about it, and we'll just talk and talk and talk. And it's nice to have people like that don't get tired of talking about it because our regular friends, our family members are like, no, I don't want to, you know, do any of that stuff. I'm not interested. So you don't talk to family and friends as much. But inside the group, I think you could pick any person that's, been in any of our meetings and call them, and they're willing to chat. They're willing to share their not just the mistakes and lessons, but also their connections, right? If you're both in the same town or near the same town, You might have a contractor that you like to work with. They'll share it. Nobody's like, I guess these days the term is gatekeeping, all their contacts and all that stuff. Everybody's willing to share because I was talking to someone last night about that. We can't buy every deal ourselves, right? So a deal comes across our table and we can't buy it for some reason or another. You don't just put it to the side. You put it in the group and say, hey, I can't do this right now, but maybe some of you guys can. And that's the kind of people that are in the group. I was wondering, I think you're fairly new as well. Did you say you started in 2022?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and as we were just talking about a minute ago, I was just wondering what was going through your mind to make you think that real estate was something you wanted to try and that you wanted to try doing it out of state.
Hmm.
What
Yeah.
was going through your mind?
Well, I come from the fire community, not the community itself, but the fire movement. When I turned 29 in 2019, I realized, oh my, I'm gonna be 30 very soon. I need to really cement what I need to know about financial security, like in 30 years I'll be retiring. What does that look like for me? Like how much money am I gonna need? Like at the time I was a homeowner here in LA and I was like, my bills are bigger now. I have to pay water, power, sewage, trash. Like I need to find out how that's going to look like in the future. So I started looking up on Instagram and YouTube and other creators to find out like what is it that I need to do in terms of investing for my future. And so I found a lot of people that were doing investing in their 401ks, opening Roth IRAs, and doing that way, that strategy. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. Let's start doing that. Let's maxing out on my 401k. Let's put money into Roth IRA. I've always been very, very frugal in my life. So it wasn't really a hard thing for me to save money for that. So I just started doing that. And then 2020, the pandemic hit. And that was my 1 year of fire moment because
Mhm.
the pandemic hit and I am a nurse. I was a nurse at that time and I was severely affected by all the deaths that were going on, especially in the hospital setting where I worked. I became a COVID nurse and it degraded my mental health drastically. And I realized I went from being a happy nurse to being, I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And that made me look into other ways of investing. I was like, I cannot wait in this job to work for 30 more years. At the time I was 10 years into my nursing career. And I cannot wait 30 more years of doing this continuously. Let me see how I can advance that journey of like retiring and maybe working less or maybe working another job or doing something else. So my thinking was like, okay, plan A is go back to school because I know how to do school. I went to school, let's find out another career or something that I can do after nursing. Plan B was like invest in real estate because I kept hearing about another invest how you can invest in real estate and thankfully retire from your W-2. But again, the gurus, everybody's like, oh, well, just invest here, put money here. And I'm like, I don't have money. So let me see what I can do. So I started going to graduate school, taking school loans, and I had the money to pay for school, but I decided, like, instead of paying school, let me use this money to buy a real estate, a rental. And I live in Los Angeles, California, and I looked around my neighborhood and quickly realized I cannot afford another house in LA. There's no way. I would have to put down like 200K or 100 to 200K of down payment. I'm like, I don't have that money. So um, I started looking elsewhere out of state. At that time, I was a traveler nurse. I was going to take a contract in Chicago, downtown Chicago, and I was going to live there for a few months. So be before knowing like what house hack was, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna probably buy a small condo or a townhouse there and then rent out the other room. and therefore taking the cost of like what me living there would be. I just rent out the other room to another traveler nurse because I was a nurse. So, but it was 2022 and nobody was paying rent in Chicago. And I quickly realized that, and I was like, okay, well, I need to be on a state that it's going to be landlord friendly. Since I'm going to be in Chicago, let me see what else is around it. So I found out Indiana's around it, then Michigan's around it, and I'm like, okay, well, let me see if I can find anybody, likewise, the fire committee, somebody online on social media that is already investing in that market. So I went on YouTube and I started watching a bunch of videos about different markets, and I stumbled upon Masky Finance YouTube channel and Millennial Mike YouTube channel. And both of them were investing in Gary, Indiana. And I quickly reached out to them like, hey, I like how your videos are set up. I like the transparency of your numbers. I like what kind of success have you had? Can we talk? Can we hop on a call? Can I email you back and forth? Like anything, right? I'm trying to like get these people's time for free. And because they were smaller creators and they were not huge creators, they gave me their time for free. And that's how I ended up kind of knowing more about Gary, Indiana in the market that I eventually fell into.
That's great. We know Millennial Mike as well. And again, I've mentioned before that Cynthia and I, my wife and I, have paid for mentorships, over these years. We started re-educating ourselves again in 2019, and our story. We tried in '07. We bought a couple properties here in California because we could get those loans. They were giving them out just for free. We had a duplex and a single family in Sacramento, and didn't know anything on how to run the business the right way. We ended up losing those after a year. We went through bankruptcy, in 2010. I found bigger pockets. I was kind of doing the same thing you were. I was just because I'm a contractor. I didn't have a retirement account for myself. And I was getting scared. I really was. Because at the time I was probably, I was 57 in 2019 when we tried doing this again. And I was listening to, I don't know if you know who Rose Hahn is, but she talked a lot about retirement accounts and that kind of thing. So I thought, if I could start dumping money into a retirement account, I might be okay. Graham Stephan, who was there at the event this year, I was listening to him and meet Kevin, and somehow Bigger Pockets fell into that one day. And I ended up watching interview. Brandon Turner was interviewing David Green, of all people. And he was a cop at the time, and he was like trying to buy some rentals so he could quit his job. So that really resonated with me. It felt like we could do it, right? And then I realized Zuber had written for Bigger Pockets in the beginning. So I found Zuber. I found the turnkey promoter that we started working with in the beginning. She used to write for Bigger Pockets as well. And from there, just started diving in. And like you said earlier, I was just listening to podcasts all day long, trying to learn as much as I could, reaching out to these people, like you mentioned. Have you heard of Ashley Hamilton? She's the Detroit investor.
Yes.
She was the first one I reached out to, and she was very nice. And we spoke a couple of times because I was thinking what she was doing in Detroit, I could do because California is very expensive, like you said. We had about $40,000 at the time, uh, and we thought we could get in that way. We didn't end up buying in Detroit, but we ended up buying in the Midwest for our first deal, and the numbers worked a lot better than we could have found around here. So, but also like you mentioned earlier, when these people and their channels were small, for example, Ashley, I could talk to her for half an hour for $50 at the time.
Mhm.
And now it's like $650 for half an hour. So I'm glad I got in when I did because I couldn't afford it now. But
Mhm.
we took some mentorships. We probably spent about $8,000. We took Ashley's course, which was very valuable. We've taken Casey's course, Brick by Brick Well, Matt and Dion and Zuber. So I'm really grateful to Zuber for all of this, just like you mentioned as well. And I always try to give back any way I can to the community because of him. So you ended up going to Gary and you met Millennium Mike because Mike's been doing it there for a little while now and he's been super successful. How did you use his network to find contractors and property managers and things like that?
Yeah, so I was talking to Mike and Maskey, which is another Mark. Um, and I think Mark had like 24 properties already in Gary, and Mike was using his copy and paste basically what he was talking about his YouTube channel. Like I had somebody that was referring me to the property managers, referring me to the contractors, referring me to the realtors. And this is what he did. And then so by the time I started talking to Mike, he was like on his seventh or ninth property. So I was like, I have two proof of concepts in this market. So let me see what they have, like what they have to say. So I interviewed their property managers, interviewed their realtors, and basically had like a shoe in because of the referrals and because they were so kind about sharing that information with me. They didn't have to hop on a call and talk to me. They didn't have to answer my multiple questions. Um, but I was just like, oh wow, there's actually great people out there that don't want you to fail or don't want to scam you or don't want to take advantage of you. So I like leaned in into that information and I just ran with it. Initially, I was scared of Gary, Indiana because of all the metrics that you hear from bigger pockets of real estate rookie, what you're supposed to look at: population growth, job market, like appreciation, all of that, all of those things. You're like, oh, it doesn't sound like it would be a good deal, but I was just like, let me like let me put my toes down. When you come from like investing in a real estate and the stock market, like buying a share, like really you never see anything that you own. Like, yes, somebody tells you you own this share from this company, let's say Coca-Cola or whatever. Uh, but you don't, there's nothing tangible there, just an email confirmation that you bought that certain share. But when you buy real estate, you're buying like a physical thing, a material thing. So I went in with the mindset and mentality of like, if it all goes to fail, then I can always sell the house. So let's see what I can do here. So I ended up west of Gary, there's a town called Hammond. And because of me being scared into investing in Gary, I was like, let me invest west of Gary. It's closer to Chicago. It's a market that has some of the metrics that we were talking about, bigger pockets or real estate rookie podcast. And then so that's how it started. I looked up a houses there. I ended up buying a house that was $135,000, and I used referral from Mark's Maskey Finance, the realtor, and I used the property manager, which is CVS Properties, if anybody wants to know. But and that was in 2022. So at the time, I was in graduate school and I needed proof of concept. Like, yes, they did have proof of concept, but now I needed my own experience. So I let it be for a whole year. I did not touch, like, I bought it, I had a renter put into it. I treated it like another bill that I had because the mortgage at that time was $880 full with taxes and insurance, and it was renting for 1,400. So I treated it as a bill, and I hoarded all that money to build up my reserves
Mhm.
for 1 year. So I didn't do anything else than just that. And I think that helped me just for my mentality of like I have that bill and then I have that rental income. So for me, the first year was, I guess, easy. And I was like, oh, I can do this again. I can buy another house. I can collect the rent again because I not only leverage all the information that Mark and Mike had given me, I also taken my time with that property and I didn't do anything crazy else than just having that one property.
I think that's that's really smart because a lot of us, myself included, we get that bug. And like you said, once you do the first deal, I was talking, it might have been Val who was on the previous interview, and we were talking about his first deal and it went really well. It's almost better if your deal is not perfect the first time because that gives you too much confidence and you might start doing crazy things that are not good business wise. So I'm glad you waited the year. I wish I would have waited a year in between purchases. But I tell Dion, when if I have money sitting in the bank, for example, 50 or $60,000, if I didn't get it into a property, that money just vanishes. Things come up in life, and before you know it, it's gone, or inflation takes its bite out of it, and it's not worth so much next year as it was this year. So for me, it's better to get it into property. And Dion made a point to say that, if you're taking your money out of your savings account and moving it into a property, you still have the money. It's just not in the savings account. And like
Mhm.
you said earlier, if things go bad, you can always sell it. Hopefully, you don't have to sell it too soon. Otherwise, you wouldn't get all of the money back.
Mhm.
But I think so. Were the first property was kind of basically turnkey. Did you have to put a
Yes,
lot of money into? Okay.
I
And
didn't. No.
and how about the second?
So the second, I was more confident, like I said. Okay, I did a Hammond. I did not die. The property did well. I was like, let me take a look at Gary because both Mark and Mike were putting content all the time. So I was like, okay, maybe now I can look at Gary. So the second property I took a look at to 2023 was a $55,000 house. And I went from like 135 to 50,000, $55,000. I'm like, wow, that's a great a great discount there. But that property needed some repairs. So when I looked at it, I was like, okay, maybe paint, maybe base boards were messed up, but it was quite cosmetic. It wasn't like I put a new bathroom, a new kitchen, or anything like that. It was a small house, almost 800 square feet. I think 780, 792, something like that. And I was like, okay, it's a little bit of repairs. It's not rent ready, but I can do that. I can do that. And then the garage was slanting, I guess. And the recommendation from the property manager was to like demo the garage. It's not salvageable. So I was just like, okay, well, how much is that gonna take? And then so I'm getting the house for $55,000. And I was like, let me see if I put a total of $10,000, maybe I'm still at 65. But the house at the time, I thought it could rent for $1,000. So I was just like, okay, there's a lot of room for there to make profit. Because if you recall the 1% rule, without even running your calculator where you put all your expenses, 1% rule would say that this is almost a 2% rule. So let's go in it. So we got the house under contract. Uh, the contractor was, I forgot what the budget was. It was not that long ago, but it was under 10K. I think it was a total of six or seven, something with the demo of the garage. And then when we closed, the contractor was painting, demo the garage, whatever. They told me, "Oh, your roof is leaking." So I needed to get a new roof, and I'm like, already we're like having some challenges, right? So I was just like, okay, like there's still money to be made. So let's do the roof. So I think that roof was the cheapest roof I got was $5,000 or something along the lines of $5,000. So we did the roof. We turned over, we got a rental ready, and we got a tenant in. And that's too much surprise. The rent for that house was 1,100, so it was more than 1,000 that I had foreseen for a two-bedroom, one bath. So even though I had to do the roof, I think I spent a total of 16K, I think altogether 55 to 16K or something along the lines. I don't recall the numbers. I should have brought the numbers with me.
Oh, that's
But
okay.
I was like, okay, my mortgage on that property, because I put rehabs on, was $388. So we have $388 and 1,100 rental income coming in. And then I went like, oh my God, this is why everybody's investing in Gary. Not everybody, but like the two people that I knew. I was just like, wow, I can do this again. But so that's what happened. But at that time, when I had the two properties rented out, two properties income producing, I'm out of cash. So I'm like, what do I do now? Like, I don't have any more savings because I just spent it on this like new house, and then I had to put a new roof, and then I had to do the cosmetic rehab. And so I went into real like Bigger Pockets podcast and a real estate rookie podcast and other books that I read. And I realized that in my primary residence, there was a lot of equity that I have built from when I purchased it and here in Los Angeles. So I was considering like using a HELOC. And I learned about a HELOC and what fixed interest HELOC looked like, what a cash out refi would look like in my house, or like in variable interest HELOC. So that's how I ended up purchasing my third property through a HELOC that I put on my house.
And that one, you bought it knowing it was going to need significant rehab.
Yeah,
That's one of your burrs. Okay.
that was my first birth, number three.
And what are you up to now? How many?
I have nine now. Um, yeah, I have nine. One of them is a duplex, so total 10 units.
Okay, great. So for the purchase of properties 4 through 9, how did you get those? Did you recycle the money from that third one and
Yeah, so what I have on my property is a HELOC that's up to 200K.
hmm,
So that gave me quite a little bit of leverage to work with.
okay.
And then I think after having those two properties, I think I did go a little bit crazy. So in 2024, I purchased my number three, which was my first burr, number four, number five, and all the way to number eight, I think. And since I was learning more about real estate, learning how to leverage debt, I did purchase things that were like force value into, so a lot of rehabs.
Mhm.
So number three, number four, number five, rehabs. Number six also. Yeah. Yeah, number six also. So I'm still, because I jumped in too fast and I went a little bit crazy. I'm still working on three of the rehabs that I purchased last year.
So for those next few, maybe 3, 4, and 5, have you already refinanced those and you pulled your money back out?
No, so right now I only refinance out of number three, and the other ones are still pretty much not refinance out yet. I'm almost at the 6 month mark in which I
Okay.
would be able to refi out, but the properties are not rehab yet finished. So that's also what's holding me off. I rehabbed out of my first birth in October when I could, which was last year. And there was a nice surprise on that property because I had I had I thought that the property will appreciate for like 85K, but it ended up appreciating for 150K.
Mm.
So that was a significantly jump from what I thought it was going to be. So there was room there, and I think I brought it up to the community in which like I could take as much as I would be allowed to take out and make the property an alligator, or I could take just what I put into the property and make it cash flow $100 or $50 or whatever it was, because the interest rates kept going up all throughout last year. I know they're going down now, but they keep creeping up last year. And then so that was my dilemma.
Yeah, so you ended up just pulling out what you put into it. You didn't go overboard.
Yes, only what
Yeah.
I put into it. And that was the crazy story because the property caught fire. So I had to rehab it twice.
Oh, and you're still okay.
I'm still okay. So because I have severely miscalculated the ARB, I was still fine. But when that happened, in my mind was like, okay, I'm going to leave money in the deal on this property. And it was a nice surprise that I appreciated for that much, but I was okay with leaving money back in the deal because at that time the interest rates were so high, mortgage rates have like changed significantly how the real estate market were doing. Everybody was saying like there's no way you can make cash flow nowadays, and so I was okay. But it was during that journey that I found one rental at a time. So before that, I only had like Masky Finance and Millennial Mike to talk to, but I'd never had like a group of people that could advise me. And then in September, I joined, I believe, one rental at a time community, and then I was like, oh, I'll ask all my questions here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Um, when you had the fire, did you end up needing to use your insurance or did you pay for the that out of pocket?
I paid for the out of pocket. I didn't want to use my insurance. First, when I bought the house cash, it was not insurable because it was not livable.
Hmm.
And so when I was finished with the rehab, I was like, okay, now I can get insurance. So I did get insurance, but it was hard for me to get insurance at the time. I had to go through a few brokers, a few companies
Mhm.
to insure. It was October of last year. I don't know why. I guess like everything else that was happening around the United States that made insurance just kind of like not want to insure homes. So I decided that if I was going to use my insurance, that it was probably going to be very difficult to get insurance in another property. And I had bought already other properties. So I made the decision to like cover it out of pocket and not have the insurance involved and continue to be able to insure the other properties.
Yeah, I think that's that was probably a good decision. We listened to Matt and Dion and Zuber, and they always say unless it's a catastrophe, like a total loss, they won't mess with their insurance. They'll pay out of pocket for repairs and things. And I believe that as well. We would do the same thing because you use it once and it increases across your whole portfolio, not just on that one property.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you did the right thing there. And it sounds like even though you've had some challenges, and obviously it hasn't deterred you, right? Because you're still buying and you're still looking for deals. So that's been really great to follow. Do you mentioned finding the community, and that may have been through Millennial Mike because he's such a big part of the ORAT community. And so Zuber, obviously, he had the Facebook group at the time. School is fairly new. It's only what 5 or 6 months that he's since he started that, but it's growing rapidly. And there are a lot of contributors, in the chats and things that are giving a lot of great advice. A lot of people are doing different types of investing, all real estate mostly, but now with build to rent in Texas and um, Jared doing the rent by the room thing, there's almost something for everybody to a style for every type of investor. So that's been really positive. Along with the burrs and things that you're doing in Gary, you mentioned that you're actually going to build out your garage at your personal residence and turn it into an ADU. You've already gone through the permitting process, I think.
Yeah. So in Los Angeles, it's very hard to cash flow, right? So I'm looking at ways of setting my mortgage in a way. And I knew that the garage, I don't really use the garage. I'm a very minimalistic person. I don't really like having a lot of belongings. Um, it's my partner who has the garage. Basically, it's just of his cars, but I came to a decision of like using that to convert to an ADU because along my neighborhood you see a lot of ADUs, and we all know the housing is not great in Los Angeles, the housing shortage. So there's more than one way I need to use the garage. I think I can also get a hold of bonus depreciation, and I do work a W-2, and I am taxed heavily in my W-2. So I'm gonna try to see if running it as a short-term rental like Airbnb would be feasible, or the numbers would work for me to write off my W-2 tax income because it will be active against active. So that's something that I'm looking forward to do if it's going to help me in any way, and also because it will offset the my mortgage payment currently.
Yeah, I think I heard you talking about that on this past week's out-of-state investor call. And there are some definite advantages doing the short-term thing to offset some of your W-2, like you said. That'd be really nice if, and all of our fingers are crossed that that works out well for you. Do you, have you noticed that that the rules for short-term and midterm rentals are still okay there in your area? Have you gotten into that
Yeah.
yet?
So the only way I can do a short term is because I'm owner occupant in the property. So I will continue to live in a property, and that's the only way I could do it. If I was a rental property, you could not do it.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I think it was similar up here. My mom was thinking about doing one on her property, but in this county, she actually would have to live in the ADU and she could rent out the house. Um, that property's been sold since then, but uh, I mentioned I heard you on the other accountability call in school, which you co-host on Fridays at 8 a.m. Pacific. I
Mhm.
was wondering, and you seem to be getting a lot more familiar with being on camera. I know you're fairly new to it as well. Are you enjoying that part of it, being out there and being in the forefront?
No, yeah. No, I'm doing it to push me out of my comfort zone. I'm a very introverted, shy person normally, and I think through joining the community, everybody keeps saying like share your story, share your journey, because you don't know who you're motivating or helping, and that's actually how I got into real estate, like by Maskey and Millennium Mike sharing their story. Like I benefited from that information, and that's why I'm doing it. I'm pushing myself to do it more, so I can inspire other women and other Latina girls like that are thinking about investing in real estate, but that don't know anybody that's actually doing it and don't know how to start. So that's why I'm doing it, not so much for like profit or anything like that. I have no idea about future what it would look like. So
Yeah, I think I'm very shy as well, but when I talk to people a lot and I had to push myself because opportunities are going to come up, right? If you didn't push Mark and Mike to talk to you through your emails, you would not be as far along as you are today. And I've had some opportunities because I listened to Zuber and I started a channel, even though you think nobody's watching it, right? Somebody is going to catch it once in a while, and they'll have a question. It's the greatest feeling when somebody reaches out and emails me or calls me with a question. And I mentioned feeling like a rookie still in the investing stages, but you and I are still a little bit ahead of a lot of people. So we can help bring them up with us if they're willing to do a little bit of the work and put in some effort. The Friday call that we mentioned that you co-host is Out of State Investor Group. Are you part of the ladies of ORAT as well? Do you jump in on that call?
they currently I show up when I can, kind of like what your accountability call as well. Sometimes I can show up, sometimes I can't. So I'm not committed to showing up, but I would like to join whenever I can. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit hard because they are first thing in the morning.
Mhm.
I know there's some other groups for real estate agents. That's on Mondays, I believe. and Jared has his call on Sunday for the East Coast Accountability Group. And I think people, sometimes we get people stop in on Wednesday, say they're trying all the groups to see which one time works better, the group feels better to them. Um, so hopefully there's something for everyone. You mentioned also that you got a little bit eager and maybe bought some things a little bit too fast. What are you just planning on getting those stabilized before you buy another, or what is your plan for this year?
Yeah, I think I should hold on. I should break a little bit. Numbers wise, I'm doing great. My whatever is rented, it's basically paying for the portfolio. I think at the end of the year, when 2025 is done, then I will be more comfortable. I did this year or like end of last year get a couple seller finance deals. So that was significantly less money than all the burrs and all of the conventional financing. So I'm looking for more seller finance deals because the last two houses that I got through seller finance, I only had to put $8,000 for per house. And that's inspired me to be more creative about real estate and hopefully only get creative deals from now on if that's available, the opportunity is there. Then so I may be able to get more houses this year, but it would be creative. It won't be anything crazy like for
Yeah,
conventional.
yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, um, not just me. I feel like I could learn from you also because we haven't done any creative financing deals yet. On those seller finance deals, were those pretty clean, meaning they didn't need too much work, or
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, so one of them is under market rents. It's already rented, and the tenant wants to continue being there, and that one's rented for 950, which for the house, it's very under market. It would if I let's say get new renters, they probably would be renting at 1,300 instead of 950. So I asked when the lease is ending. I think it's ending sometime in June of this year, and then would be willing to increase the rent a little bit, not like to market rent whatsoever, or see what they would want to do. There's a lot of room there for me. Um, and the other one was rental ready. So it was empty, but it was rental ready. So I did not have to put any rehab into it. So that's why it was so appealing to me to go and get those out of the hands of somebody else.
and were they just tired of having the rentals? What was the seller story?
So the seller story, I cannot say his name, but he's been investing in Gary for years, like probably a couple of decades.
Hmm.
And I believe what I was told was that he's Detroit, he's in Detroit now, and he sees more, I guess, more of a market in Detroit. And so he's liquidating his assets in Gary and moving to Detroit because it's
Well,
more local to him, I guess.
yeah, no, that's a good reason for him to move. Um, and we talk about that too. Uh, we learn so many things every day, right? From mindset shifts and things like that, and just because, especially for me, I didn't really have a very good financial understanding background, I guess you would call it. Um, but you talked earlier about interest rates going up, and one of the things that always pops into my head is before real estate, that was a bad thing. Now it's not a thing, right? Because you can find a good deal no matter what the rate is. And just like you said, if you find a creative financing deal, a tired landlord or something like that, you can work it that way, and it's a lot more beneficial, and you can keep scaling. Um, in our case, we're a little closer to retirement age, so we don't, I think we're investing for cash flow because we don't have a ton of time for appreciation and things like that to kick in and benefit from that. So I think there's something for everybody in this space, and there's so many people willing to help that it's a always a great time to get in if you're interested. When as your portfolio is growing, are you still in the same career, or did you end up changing careers through school?
Through school, so I became a nurse practitioner, so I'm not longer working inpatient in hospitals. I'm working more community-based, kind of like home health care. Um, and that's been a challenging change as well. The first year, at least, which is when I graduated in 2023 to 2024, it's been quite eye-opening in a different way. But I do want to work less. So I went from working, 5 12-hour shifts to now working 40 hours to like see if and through real estate and maybe through opening my own business, I can work even less. So my goal is to hopefully in the future work only 16 hours a week instead of 60. So that's what one of my goals is currently right now as of 2025. And that might change. Who knows? I don't know what the future holds, but I think real estate is making me see that that could happen sooner than later.
Yeah, you keep bringing up all these great points, and the further along we are in the journey, the more options we have, right? I I hear people my age talking about, oh, it's too late. I can't really, I won't benefit from it, things like that. But for us, if we hadn't gotten started at 57 again, we wouldn't, I mean, we'd be in a way worse spot today than we are now. And also, I mentioned I'm a contractor, so I'm hoping, well, my wife hopefully will be retiring this year, but with the portfolio that we have so far, maybe I can be more choosy on the jobs that I take because I think I still will need to work for a while, but a lot of the stuff is pretty labor intensive and I do all my own work. So if I can taper that back and just maybe do some of the easier things, because I really love what I do, my body doesn't, but that's, a different story. So I think that's probably a good place to end, but I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure people watching or listening in the future are going to get a lot of value. And like I said, your channel, Lynn Does Investing, we'll put that in the notes, and it's cool with you if people reach out.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally fine. I encourage everybody to just send me a message through YouTube or whatever, and I'll send you my private email and we can talk about real estate. And
All
I
day.
am in the community every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So anybody in the community can reach out. I think we could have anybody outside of the community to jump in. I think that's an option as well. So
Yeah,
everybody.
I think, yeah. So my recordings, obviously they'll be on my channel. So people outside of the school community will have access to it as well. So that's been great. And I really appreciate Zuber giving us the chance to put this on the school platform as well to help those people in the group. Um, so we'll look forward to chatting with you soon. If you want to hang out for a minute, we'll just end the recording here and then we'll chat.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.